So you can just start comfortably, either seated or lying down, wherever you want to start. I don't need to see technology. I'm going to take my glasses off. So I'm going to start seated, but you can lie down if you want to. Finding your space, make any adjustments that you need to. We're just starting comfortably so that we can bring our awareness into the body and the breath and not have to worry about what's going on with our body. We can soften or close the eyes. Just taking a moment to let go of whatever kind of day you've had. If you're outside and it was a busy day, or if it was a slow, easy day, whatever kind of day it was, just setting that aside for now. And coming onto your mat, either seated or lying down, finding your space. And starting to draw your awareness inward. Maybe just starting to notice what the body feels like here on your mat, either seated or lying down or wherever you are. Noticing any sensations that you feel in your body. Anywhere you feel tired or achy or sore. Anywhere you feel relaxed. And then just starting to notice where you feel the breath in the body. Do a little bit more breath awareness today. You don't have to change the breath right away, you're just noticing where you feel the breath. You might feel it just in the nostrils or the back of the throat. You might feel it in the chest or the shoulders. Maybe the breath is a little more expansive or deep, and you might feel it in the rib cage or even the abdomen. Or maybe you feel it somewhere totally and completely different, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong answers. We're just observing and noticing where our breath is. And maybe noticing if the inhales are longer than the exhales, or the exhales are longer than the inhales. Noticing the qualities of the breath. Is it short? Is it long? Is it wide? Is it raspy? Is it shallow? Is it deep? Is it fast or slow? Do you feel it more in the front body than the back body or the sides? So just really becoming aware of the sensations of the breath. Where you feel it and what it feels like. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. Just noticing where you're starting from. Notice if there is any holding or clenching. When we become stressed, we tend to hold it in the physical body, so maybe the shoulders are a little higher than they need to be. Can you shrug them up to the ears and then slowly roll them back and let them drop down? And as you let the shoulders drop down, can you also let the bottom jaw drop down? Creating just a little bit of space between the bottom row of teeth and the top row of teeth. Even let the lips slightly part, maybe even inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth if that feels comfortable. Notice if you're holding the abdomen in, can you let all those core muscles relax and soften? And then notice if you're holding anywhere else in, the hands, the hips, anywhere else in the body that you can soften. notice these subtle changes in the body change the breath a little bit as well. So when we soften the belly, the breath softens and allows for the breath to move a little bit deeper as well. And take your awareness now to the front of your chest. And as you inhale, feel the breath enter the nostrils and go down the back of the throat, and then fill up from the center of the chest outwards across the shoulders. And then exhale, let those shoulders drop down again. Let the chest soften. We'll do that a few times. So inhale from the nostrils down the throat into the center of the chest, letting the chest open a little bit as you breathe in. You don't have to emphasize this movement, just feel it with the breath, and then exhale, let it go. And then take your awareness to the back of the chest. And as you inhale, feel the back of the chest widen from the space behind your shoulder blades out towards the sides of your shoulders. And then exhale, let that go. And we'll do that a few times. So inhaling into the back of the chest, in between the spine and the shoulder blades, letting that space widen, and then exhaling and softening. And then into the front and the back of the chest. So inhaling wide, front to back, and then exhale, let it go, either through the nose or the mouth. And then into the sides of the chest, so underneath the armpits. And exhale, let that go. And then with your next few inhales, invite the breath into the rib cage. Maybe just the front of the ribs to start with. You can even place your hands on the front of your ribs and just feeling the expansion of the rib cage. As you inhale, the ribs move outwards. And as you exhale, they soften inwards. And then into the sides of the ribs. Breath is wide. Again, just feeling the expansion as you breathe in. And then the softening as you breathe out. And then into the back of the ribs as well. Feeling that space in the middle of the spine as you breathe in. And exhaling to soften. And then all the way around the ribs. So inhale front, sides, back. And then exhale, let it go. So as we inhale, think about stretching the ribs wide. And then exhale, just softening and feeling those ribs gently draw back inwards. And then start to emphasize that around the bottom of the rib cage into those upper abdominal muscles. And all the way around, the front, the sides, the back, like you're filling up an inner tube just below the ribs, at the very top of the waist. Inhaling, expanding, and exhale, softening. So we're really stretching those inner core muscles, ones that wrap all the way around the spine. And in breathing this way too, we're starting to work the diaphragm muscle, our biggest breathing muscle. And then start to move that down a little bit, as long as it's comfortable. So moving just down from the bottom of the ribs into about the mid-abdomen, so around the belly button. Again, you can emphasize the front first. Inhale, expand, stretch. And then exhale, soften. And then in towards the sides of the waist. And then starting to move towards the lower back. And again, like you're filling up an inner tube, now around the middle of the waist. Inhale, expand outwards, away from the spine. And then exhale, soften. Of course, we wouldn't normally breathe like this, but we're just stretching all those deep core muscles. So inhale, expand. And exhale, soften. And then moving that just a little bit lower now. So below the belly button, maybe just above the hips, above the pelvic bowl, inhaling. Front, sides, back. Exhale, soften. Inhale, expand the breath from the inside out, stretching those deep core muscles, and then exhale, let it go. So you can imagine your core muscles like an elastic band. Inhale, stretch them, pull them, and then exhale, release them, and they naturally recoil back inwards. And now we'll start to move downwards. So from the belly button to the pubic bone. So lengthening the lower abdominal muscles. Think inhale, lengthen, all the way down towards the pubic bone, and then exhale, just soften again, and they'll naturally recoil a little bit. Inhale, lengthen belly button to pubic bone, and exhale, soften. And then the pelvic floor muscles, which are also part of our deep core system. So we're going to inhale from the pubic bone to the tailbone. So if you're sitting, you can think about inhaling towards the floor, and then exhaling, softening. And those pelvic floor muscles will naturally contract back inwards. If you're lying down, you can think inhale towards the bottom of your mat, and then exhale, let it go. Same visual, you can use that elastic band. Inhale, stretch. And then exhale, let it go, let it naturally recoil. And then you can think sit bone to sit bone, which is a little easier if you're actually sitting. So side to side, inhale. And then exhale, let that go. If you're lying down, you can think towards the bottom of the pelvic bowl and out towards the sides of your mat. Inhale. And then exhale, let it go. And then we'll do a few breaths with the whole core system. So you can think from the bottom of the rib cage, filling up that inner tube, and then all the way down past the belly button, past the hips, from the pubic bone to the tailbone, sit bone to sit bone, and then exhale, let it all go. So now we can visualize this cylinder. As we inhale, the sides of the cylinder open, the bottom lengthens, and then we exhale and it all kind of recoils back inwards. Inhale, open up that cylinder, sides, bottom, and then exhale, let it go. We'll just do this maybe 2 more times. Inhale, big breath, and exhale, let it go. And then 1 more time, just at your own pace. And now just come back to your own breath, your natural breath. And just notice what that feels like now. Has that breath changed now? If the eyes are still closed, you can start to blink them open. If you're seated, maybe doing some shoulder rolls. If you're lying down, you can hug the knees into the chest. So we're just going to talk about those core muscles for a moment. You've probably heard a lot from Olivia about the breath. But that diaphragm muscle sits underneath our rib cage, and it's kind of like an umbrella. So it kind of domes up. And it's actually really important to the health of our spine as well, because it connects right at the top of the lumbar spine, the lower back. So when we breathe, if we're holding in and we're not using that diaphragm muscle to its full capacity, we can experience tension in the lower back. So when we're not using those core muscles in sync with the breath, again, it can move into the hips, the pelvis, around the sacrum. We can have a lot of tension in there because we're constantly holding in. So we want to allow that breath to move in conjunction with those core muscles. So what happens with the diaphragm muscle, you've probably heard this from Olivia, but a little bit of review. When you inhale, that dome of that diaphragm muscle contracts and it thins out and it pulls down. So it contracts, it's engaged, and that's what creates that vacuum in the lungs to pull breath into the lungs. So if we're not using that diaphragm muscle to its full capacity, we're not filling the lungs up with as much breath as we possibly could, which is really important for when you're singing. So we want to make sure that that diaphragm muscle is nice and strong. So when we inhale, contracts, moves down. When we exhale, it relaxes and it domes back up underneath the ribs. In conjunction with that, the pelvic floor muscle, I'm going to do my hands this way because it moves the same way. So when we inhale and the diaphragm muscle contracts, the pelvic floor eccentrically, so it means it actively lengthens downwards. So it does this, it lengthens. Diaphragm muscle contracts, thins out, pelvic floor muscles eccentrically lengthen and stretch downwards. And then when we exhale, the pelvic floor muscles contract and thin out and move up, and the diaphragm muscle relaxes and comes back up. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So they should be moving in conjunction with each other. When we're holding in, then they're not, and we're causing tension, and that can result in all sorts of things for our overall health. But to really use those core muscles for your singing, it helps to think about that kind of pump action. Inhale, exhale. They're constantly moving with each other. At the same time, our corset muscles, our deep core muscles, they're called transverse abdominals, but I always call them corset muscles just because they act like corset around our midsection. They expand outwards. So when I talked about that visual of that pop can or that cylinder, the sides come outwards away from the spine. They expand. They should be allowed to stretch. And then when we exhale, they naturally come back in. Obviously, when we sing, we want to engage them a little bit just to get all of that air out and to support those notes. So just a little bit of background about how that breath should be working with those core muscles. Obviously, we wouldn't always take that huge, deep breath in before you sing because that takes a long time to expand and you need to take pretty quick breaths. But the more you breathe like that in warm-up and stretching, and when you're warming up with your vocals, the more you're going to strengthen those core muscles to just naturally do that on their own and work in conjunction with that diaphragm muscle. So we're going to do a couple of just positions to activate that breath and to work that diaphragm muscle, and then we'll get into some more opening up the posture. So we want to open up the chest and the shoulders again, and the front of the hips and the front of the pelvis. So you're going to grab your blanket or towel, whatever you're using, and you're going to roll it up. It's going to be about the width that a rolled up yoga mat would be. And you're going to lay it horizontally across your mat, and we're going to actually lay down on our stomach on it. So you can take a moment to kind of set that up, and then you're going to lie down, and it's going to be just below your belly button, kind of in your lower abdominal region. Now, if you have a lot of tension here in the lower abdomen, this might be a little bit uncomfortable. You can unroll it if it's too thick and flatten it out a bit more. So if you're feeling like it's too much pressure, you can unwind it a little bit. But remembering that a little bit of discomfort isn't a bad thing. We want a little bit of discomfort so that we're creating change in the body, and that's just that lengthening out of those muscles and those connective tissues. We're going to lie all the way down, so you can stack your hands and rest your forehead down or turn over to one cheek. So let the head and the neck relax. Take your feet as wide or as close together as comfortable. You can give those hips a little wiggle out. And then we're just going to relax here and breathe. So once you get the body kind of sorted out and figured out, then just let the body settle. And then start to come back into that deep core breath. So you can think inhale, expand. Open up that cylinder, the sides, front, back, all the way down to the bottom. And then exhale, let it go. It's really easy to feel the breath in the front body. See if you can start to expand it more into the sides and the back. So that we're really opening up those core muscles to help strengthen that whole breathing system, supporting that diaphragm muscle. So inhaling from the ribs, to the belly button, to the pubic bone, to the tailbone, sit bone, wrapping all the way around the spine, and then exhaling and letting that go. So we're going to breathe here for about a minute. Inhale through the nose and then exhale through the nose or the mouth. And soften or close your eyes again. And just each inhale, think lengthen, expand, stretching from the inside, and then exhale, soften. Feel those muscles and those connective tissues naturally recoil. Big breath in. If it feels okay, maybe even holding that inhale for a moment, really getting that nice deep stretch. And then when you're ready, exhale. Let it go. And the trick here is when the body's not moving and we're not busy, to keep the mind preoccupied with that breath. Just keep following the path of that breath. Inhale, stretching that cylinder, those deep core muscles. Exhale. Notice what that release of the breath feels like. And then we'll count maybe 3 more breaths here. Maybe 1 more breath. And then take your time, there's no rush. Start to bring your hands underneath your shoulders. Start to press yourself up onto your hands and knees. You can move your blanket off to the side just for a moment, and we'll just sit back for child's pose. So you can take the knees a little wider, hips towards the heels, and then lowering the head back down. And if the head doesn't touch the floor, you can stack the hands underneath the head, or you can even grab your rolled blanket. And just letting that lower back relax, letting the head be heavy, letting that bottom jaw drop. Just coming back to your own natural breath now. And again, just noticing what that breath feels like. One more breath here in child's pose. And then again, taking your time to come up, we're going to come forward onto the hands and knees. So if the knees are sensitive and you're on a hard floor, you can double up your mat, or you can grab your folded blanket and just lay it across so your knees have some extra padding. We're going to come into a tabletop position, shoulders over the wrists, hips over top of the knees. Make sure the feet are also hips width apart. And just coming into a neutral spine here for a moment. So to find neutral, the front of our hip bones are roughly in line with our pubic bone, so that pelvic bowl is neutral, and then the spine will automatically be neutral coming out of the pelvis. So you can use the hands to find that, or if you have a mirror close by, you can check in the mirror, or you can even just look back at your hips and notice where they are. And we're just going to stay neutral while we use that deep core breath. So we're going to inhale from the ribs to the belly button, to the pubic bone, to the tailbone. And then just exhale, let that release. And you'll feel those muscles again naturally recoil. Big breath in. Don't let the pelvis or the hips move. And then exhale, release. And now we'll start to move. So as you inhale, now we're going to tip the pelvis so the belly button drops towards the floor. And then we're going to lift the heart and the chest forward. Keep your gaze down and forward so the back of the neck is long, and you'll feel the front of those core muscles stretch. And then as we exhale, we'll start to gently round inward and open up the back of the shoulders. So away from the spine. Think about lifting the back of the heart towards the ceiling And then we'll inhale, tip the pelvis, lift the chest. Really stretching those core muscles, especially in the front, and then exhale, gently drawing inwards. And one more time, we'll inhale, lengthen. Open that front body, and then exhale, and gently round the back body. And then we'll come back to neutral, and you can step your right foot forward, hands are inside that right foot. Again, if we're going to come up to a lunge, so if you need some extra padding under that left knee, you can grab it. I'm just going to pause here for a moment, let our hips kind of settle into this lunge position. And then we'll bring the hands up to that front thigh, and then use the hands on the thigh to press and lift up the chest. And then we want to find that neutral pelvis again. So the tendency when we're in a lunge or with the feet separated front to back is to let the pelvis tip forward, because those hip flexor muscles are very tight and tend to pull on the pelvis, which can create compression in the lower back. So we want to find that neutral position again, in front of the hips roughly in line with the pubic bone, so we're up a little bit more. Pelvic bowl is upwards, so the spine is nice and tall. And then we want to think about just gently pressing the hips forward. So you'll feel a stretch in the front of that left hip, the front of that left thigh. And if you need balance, you can keep the hands here on that thigh for support and just start to open the chest. And we're going to come back into a nice deep breath here. Inhale, open the ribs, open those core muscles all the way down to the pelvic floor, and then just exhale, let it go. Now if you want to add in the arms, we're going to inhale the arms up as we open the ribs and open those core muscles. And then we're going to exhale, bend the elbows and open the chest a little bit more. So you can think, inhale, lengthen the breath down as you bring the arms up, open the ribs, and then exhale, open the chest. Inhale, open the ribs. Exhale, open the chest. Palms are facing forward. Let's do that one more time. Inhale, open the ribs. Exhale, open the chest. And then we'll bring the hands down, back inside that front foot. We'll step that right foot back. Come back down to the hands and knees, and we're going to come all the way down onto our tummy. Feet can be wide again. We're going to come into Sphinx pose. So we're going to bring those elbows forward, fingertips forward, and we want to make sure that our elbows aren't any wider than our shoulders. If there's any pinching in the lower back, we can walk the hands further forward so we're not at such a high angle. And then we want to tip the pubic bone down a little bit. By tipping the pubic bone down, we're creating that neutral pelvis in a back extension. So if the pelvis is tipped forward, again, we get a lot of compression in the lower back. If we pull the pelvic bowl up, so pubic bone down, so the hips are coming up a little bit, then the spine automatically wants to come up as well. So we can use the forearms to press down into the floor and lift and open the chest. Strengthening the upper back muscles. So we want to use those upper back muscles while we relax the lower back muscles. And then we can use that deep core breath again. Inhale. Soften around the belly button, lengthen to the pubic bone and the tailbone, and then exhale, let it go. Inhale, open the ribs, soften the belly button, and exhale, let it go. And we'll just do that one or two more times. Inhale, and exhale, and if you've had enough of this back extension, you can come down, or one more breath. Inhale. And exhale. Walk the elbows out. If you're still up, hands underneath the shoulders. Press yourself up onto the hands and knees. And then we'll tuck the toes just for a quick downward dog. So tuck the toes under, lift the knees, lift the hips, and just walk out the backs of the legs for a moment. Lengthen through the spine. Give the head a little shake. Forward and back, up and down, side to side. And then we'll come back down to the knees. And we'll step the left foot forward this time. We'll just pause here again for a moment. Hands are inside that left foot. If you need padding for that back knee again, you can grab it. Let adjust to the second side. And then when you're ready, we'll start to bring those hands up to that front thigh, that left thigh. Again, notice that the pelvis tends to tip forward here. So we're going to come up a little bit, so use the hands to press yourself up. And then even out that pelvis, so hips in line with the pubic bone. So my pelvic bowl is lifted, my spine wants to be up nice and tall. Start to breathe here. Inhale, open the chest, open the ribs, lengthen down to the pubic bone, to the tailbone, open up those core muscles, and then exhale to soften. Inhale, open the ribs, exhale, soften. Stay here or add the arms in. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, bend the elbows, palms forward, open the chest. So inhale, arms up, open the ribs, lengthen to the pubic bone and the tailbone, and then exhale, bend the elbows and open the chest. Inhale, open and stretch those core muscles, and then exhale, relax the core as you open the chest. One more time, inhale, open those ribs, exhale, open the chest. And then hands come back to the mat, and we'll step that left foot back, and we'll come back all the way down to our tummies. And we'll come back into Sphinx pose again, so fingertips and elbows forward. Feet can be wide or close together, whatever feels better for the lower back. And then pressing the pubic bone down so that the pelvic bowl is lifted, so that the spine wants to lift. And then try to relax the lower back as we work the upper back muscles. So shoulders shouldn't be shrugged up. They should be down and drawn in towards the spine. So the collarbones are nice and wide. If you feel any compression in the back of the neck, take your gaze downward. And then 3 core breaths. So inhale, open the ribs, soften the belly button, breathe to the pubic bone, to the tailbone. Exhale, let it go. Inhale, open the ribs, belly button to pubic bone to tailbone. Exhale, let it go. One more, inhale. All the way down, nice and wide, and then exhale, release. And then walk the elbows out. Bring the hands under the shoulders. Press yourself back up onto the hands and knees. Tuck the toes, and we'll just lift into our downward dog to walk it out. Lengthen that spine. Shake out the head. And then we'll come back down to the knees and sit back on the heels for a moment. So we're going to grab our rolled up blanket. So if you've unrolled it, you can roll it back up. And we're going to place it lengthwise along the mat this time. And then we're going to lie down with the blanket in line with our spine. So the bottom of the blanket is at about the base of the spine, and then you're going to lie yourself back. And if you have a shorter blanket or towel that you're using, just make sure that the head is supported. And then you're going to kind of balance yourself out between the two sides. You can keep the knees bent, or you can extend the legs out. Try to turn the palms open towards the ceiling. And then just imagine the two sides of your body kind of melting over either side of the blanket. And then we'll just stay here for a moment and breathe. And just letting that blanket support the length of the spine. Once you've kind of gotten here, then you just relax and come back into the breath. So just a lot of breath awareness today. Softening or closing the eyes, you can take that awareness back inwards and just noticing the breath. Maybe coming back into that deep core breath if you want, or just staying with a nice, easy breath here. Noticing if the breath is still getting stuck or if it's restricted from anywhere in the body. And starting to ease the breath into those tight spaces in the body. Really allowing the breath to kind of open up anywhere that you're clenching or holding. Let the breath move through that space in the body, wherever that is for you, and then exhale. Imagine breathing that tension out of the body. Stay here for 3 to 5 more breath cycles. And if your mind is starting to wander to any to-do list that you have, or any part of your day that's already occurred, just keep coming back to the breath. Know that it's okay if your mind wanders away. That's what it's designed to do. But just keep reminding it to come back. Where is my breath now? And 2 more breaths here. Now we're going to have to get a little bit active in that core because we're going to start to move the body. You can start to blink the eyes open if you like, or you can just keep the eyes closed here. We're going to keep the core and the spine kind of balanced on the blanket. We're just going to reach the right arm up and overhead for a moment. It may or may not touch the floor. And then you're going to start to bend the left knee and bring the left knee in. Now you might have to balance a little bit with the right leg and the left arm. So counterbalance and engage the core a little bit to balance. So right arm and left knee are coming up. And nice and slow, we're just going to inhale here. And then as you exhale, you're going to slowly bring the right arm and the left leg back to the floor. And then we're going to take the left arm overhead. We'll just pause with the left arm for a moment. Find your balance. Who knew that balancing on a blanket was so difficult? We're going to slowly now start to bend the right knee. Bring the right knee up, and we'll inhale. And then as you exhale, we'll try to bring both down together nice and slow. So now we're going to try to do both at the same time. So the right arm and the left leg. So you can use the opposite hand and foot to counterbalance. But the right hand and the left knee are going to come up as we inhale. And then we're going to exhale them slowly back down to the floor. And then the left hand and the right knee are going to come up as we inhale. Keep letting those ribs expand with the breath, and then we'll exhale and slowly release both back to the floor. And we'll do that one more to each side. So right arm, left knee, inhale, raise them up. Try not to rush through this, make it nice and slow and controlled, and then exhale, release them both back down together. And then the left arm and the right knee, inhale. And then we'll exhale, release them both back down. And then again, just pause here for a moment, give those hips a little wiggle. And we're just going to roll off the blanket, and you're going to slide that blanket down. We're going to bend the knees now, have the feet flat. You're going to lift the hips and slide the blanket underneath the curve of the lower back. So not underneath the hips or the base of the spine. You're going to let the tailbone kind of drop over the other side of the blanket. So we're going to have a little bit more of an accentuated curve in the lower back here. And then you're just going to kind of wiggle the hips a little bit from side to side. And now you can keep the knees bent, or you can start to walk the feet out a little bit. And if it feels okay, you can extend the legs completely straight. And then we're just going to drop one hip at a time. kind of side to side. So it's the same movement that you would do if you were walking. So I'm just going to stand up so that you can see what I mean. So I'm going to show you my hips. So you're just doing this. You're dropping one and then the other. It's the movement that your pelvis and your hips do when you walk. So you're just going to think about dropping one hip and then the other. Drop, drop. So you're just walking, either with the knees bent or the legs straight, whichever feels better. We're just kind of shifting the hips side to side, up and down. Notice if you're really tight in the lower back region, around the base of the spine. There's a little bit of discomfort as you do this. There might be more so on one side than the other. This is going to help stretch and lengthen that out. Let's do that a couple more times. And then we can all bend our knees again. And then you're going to slide that blanket now underneath the hips. So now the tailbone is lifted up off the floor. And we're just going to pause here for a moment. Not moving now, just letting the hips and the pelvis and the tailbone and the base of the spine be supported by the blanket. So it's just kind of lifting our bum up off the floor. Thought I saw somebody had a question. All right, so just a couple more breaths here. This is a supported bridge pose. We're not holding the hips up, we're just letting that blanket hold the hips up for us. You can do this with a block or a bolster at home as well. We're going to start to extend the left leg outwards. So the right knee is going to stay bent, and you're just going to start to reach the left leg out. Now if those hip flexors are really tight, again, you might feel a little bit of resistance to straighten that leg. Just go as far as you're able to, and then let that left leg relax for a moment. And then we're going to take 3 deep core breaths here, and I want you to think about when you inhale and lengthen downwards, like you're also inhaling down into the front of that left hip. When we focus the breath in an area of the body, it helps to lengthen the connective tissues from the inside. Right? So we're just thinking about that breath as we inhale, opening up that space around that left hip. And then you're just going to exhale and let it go. What happens when we use those deep core muscles to breathe is that it affects the connective tissues and the muscles around the deep core muscles. So because we're breathing with the pelvic floor, there's a lot of muscles and connective tissues that run from the spine through the pelvis and into the legs. And they all kind of wrap around each other, and it's a pretty tight space, so that's why we have so much tension in our hips. So when we use those deep core muscles and we stretch them from the inside, we're opening up space for all those other muscles and connective tissues in that area as well. Or our psoas muscle is a muscle, it's our hip flexor, so that's why those get so tight, because it pulls us into flexion. They get really tight if we sit, so if you've been sitting a lot, like I have, they'll be pretty tight. But it connects from our lower back, runs down, there's 2 of them, they run down either side of our spine through the pelvis and connect to the inner thigh. And when they're tight, they pull the pelvis and cause lots of tension for the lower back. So we're going to start to bend that left knee, bring that in, and then start to slide the right leg out. Again, just as far as you can. Again, you might notice a big difference between the 2 sides. One side might be tighter than the other, or you might feel it in a slightly different area. And come back into that deep core breath. This time as you inhale, now breathing down towards the front of that right hip. And then softening as you exhale. You can think inhale, lengthen. Open up space in the body. Think about everything stretching and expanding on the inside as you inhale. Right? That breath takes up space. Everything has to expand and adjust for that. And then we exhale and let it go. If we resist that expansion as we breathe in, we're causing chronic tension, right? Because we're just holding in and gripping. So let yourself move and expand with the breath, right? We're living, breathing organisms. We're constantly in rhythm and movement. So let your body move in and out with the breath. And one more breath here on that right side. And then we'll start to bend that right knee, slide that right foot in. We'll slide that blanket out for now. We're going to move it up the spine in a moment. Let those hips come back down to the floor and give them a little walk out again, a little bit of a wiggle. And then just take the feet a little wider and windshield wiper those knees from side to side. Try to resist the urge to hug the knees into the chest after doing that supported bridge and that stretching out of those psoas muscles, because otherwise we're just bringing them back into that flexion, into that closed position. So we want to let them stay nice and long. I'm going to grab that blanket again. And this time you might have to roll over and then sit up for a moment. We're going to take it underneath the upper back, so about at the bottom of the shoulder blades. So you're going to lie back, still horizontal across the mat. The arms are going to be just above that roll blanket. You're going to let the head come to the floor. The knees can be bent or straight again, whatever feels more comfortable for you. And we're just going to let the chest and the shoulders open. Make any little adjustments that you need to as well, right? I mean, who knew that using a rolled up blanket in yoga would be so challenging and uncomfortable? But when we get into all these tight little spaces in the body, we hold a lot of tension. And it does become quite uncomfortable. Know that we're not going to stay here forever, and that a little bit of discomfort, again, is not a bad thing. It's where the change happens. It's where we process any uncomfortable feelings or emotions. We don't have to stay there. Just acknowledge that space. Breathe into it and through it, and let it go. And then if you want to roll over again and move the blanket up, you can, or I'm just going to scooch myself down until that rolled blanket is in the back of my neck crease. And then we're going to do that same walking movement with the hips, and you're going to let your whole body relax so that your head should be kind of bobbing up and down as you shift the hips down from one side to the other. Legs can be bent or straight as you do this, but the whole body should be so relaxed that that head is just kind of bobbing side to side. Kind of like that walking movement. And then if you want to add just a little head turn from side to side, it doesn't have to be fast, it can be nice and slow. And then when you're ready, we're just going to come into stillness, just letting the back of the head be supported, knees can be bent again or the legs can be straight. You can soften or close the eyes and just take a moment here to rest. We'll take 3 last deep core breaths and then come back to a nice, easy, relaxed breath. So exhale all the way out. And then when you're ready, inhaling, fill up around the bottom of the ribs, filling up that inner tube. Take that down to the belly button, the top of the hips, and then down to the pubic bone and to the tailbone, and sit bone to sit bone, and then exhale, let it go through the nose or the mouth. Inhale from the ribs to the belly button, to the hips, pubic bone to tailbone, sit bone, and then exhale, let it go. And one more time, inhale. Open up that space all the way around the spine and then down to the pelvic floor. Hold that for a moment. And then exhale, release. And then just come back to an easy breath. Notice again if you're holding anywhere. And let go. Let the feet and the hips turn out. Shoulders are relaxed down. You want to snuggle those shoulder blades inwards to the spine. And let the head and the neck feel supported here. Bottom jaw relaxed. Fingertips curled. And just come back to noticing the breath. Without controlling the breath, let go of control now. Just notice where you feel the breath. Don't worry if it's gone back to being shallow or if you just feel it in the chest. Just notice that. Know that that's okay. Let the breath be soft. Let everything get a little heavier as you exhale. And see if you can just stay here for a moment, watching the gentle rise and fall of the breath without controlling it. Just be present and experience the sensation of your breath. Anytime your mind wanders, again, remind yourself that that's okay. Just gently bring yourself back to the breath. Staying relaxed, you can gently begin to deepen the breath. Maybe give the fingers and toes a gentle wiggle when you're ready. If you'd like, you can keep the eyes closed, maybe reaching the arms overhead or moving the jaw around. Just coming back to the sensation of the physical body, your space on your mat. When you're ready, maybe hugging the knees into the chest, taking a little rock side to side or up and down. Without being in a rush, finding your way onto either the right or the left side, pausing there for another breath or two. And then when you're ready, joining me in a comfortable seated position, and we'll close our practice together. We'll close with the hands gently over the heart and the head bowed inward. Just taking a moment to thank yourself for this time and space on your mat today. Remind yourself that you're worth this time and space, and that it doesn't need to be an hour. It can even just be 30 seconds of just paying attention to your breath. May you feel safe. May you feel resourced. May you feel connected. And I want to thank each of you for joining me in this practice. Namaste.